I accept the coaster challenge.
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 Do you accept the coaster challenge?
What is the coaster challenge? A group of regular people that went from fearful to fearless, all from riding roller coasters. So please secure your hats and glasses. It's time to take the coaster challenge with your hosts David Cantu and JD Prescott.
Hey JD, what'd you think about that intro?
It was great.
Yeah, I really want to take the opportunity to thank our team members and our organization that helped put that together for us.
They worked really hard on that. That was really cool.
Yes, I really want to thank you guys for your love and support. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to our first inaugural episode of Coaster Challenge Podcast, and I'm David Cantu.
I'm JD Prescott.
And today we have a special guest joining us. We have Kirbo. How's it going, Kirbo?
Very good.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And today we are going to be just want to welcome and thank all you guys for taking the opportunity to listen to us. We hope that we can make this podcast be entertaining and also educational. As this podcast, we're just going to be interviewing regular people that have had faced the courage to ride their very first coaster and want to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, mine. I like coasters. I do. I'm not what you call an enthusiast, but I ride them, so.
Yes, well, my first, experience on coasters turned me into an enthusiast, and I'm very proud of the Coaster Challenge YouTube channel that we have built for the last 5 years, and I really want to thank all our supporters out there that have showed, tremendous, support for us, for doing it's a lot of work to do a YouTube channel, and we hope we do everybody proud on our podcast. So, but really in this first episode, we're going to take this opportunity to really, JD and I just want to introduce ourselves, considering we're going to be the main hosts of this podcast, and we just want to be able to share with all of you our first time coaster experience, and Kirbo being our first guest, he's going to be sharing with us some of his crazy times and tell us about his first time experience on a coaster. But before we get all into that, let's see what's going on in the news. Alright, so Knott's Berry Farm is introducing the Knott's Taste of Boysenberry Festival. Knott's Berry Farm welcomes spring with a new food and retail experience. The Taste of Boysenberry Festival celebrates all things boysenberry, beginning March 1st and goes all the way to May 2nd. You must make a reservation because of the COVID restrictions still in place here in California. Six Flags Magic Mountain held a new special event drive-thru by West Coast Customs. It was the Cruisin' the Park car show. It started on February 26th and it went till March 14th. And by the way, that was a really awesome experience that JD and I got to see too, just on a side note. Right, JD?
Yeah, lots of cool cars.
Yeah. So I want to thank Magic Mountain for inviting us to that. Disney's California Adventure is opening the park for the first time for the Food and Wine Festival. The only most special thing going on this year is that the entire park is going to be open for the first time, and the entire festival is going to be throughout the entire park. So that, unfortunately, no rides are going to be operating during the festival. It's going to be going on all through the month of April, and you might want to check Disney's website to make sure there's room for a reservation if you have not placed your reservation yet. And also, Universal City Walk is open for outdoor dining. So make sure to go visit Universal City Walk and go shop and dine and support all the businesses all throughout that area. And we hope that all the parks open up very, very soon.
Yes, please. Soon.
All right, so in this episode, like I said earlier, we're in as an introductory, so you guys can get to know me and JD and Kirbo, that we're going to talk about our first coaster experience. I will say that we've had some very interesting experiences. I know that JD, you and Kirbo have had some fun park experiences between the two of you.
Yeah, we did. We've gone to Magic Mountain, Six Flags Magic Mountain, and Universal.
Wow. So, JD, I guess I'll kick it off with you, but tell us about what was the first coaster you ever experienced?
My first coaster, I was 8, 9 years old. I want to say it was Viper, actually. It was the first roller coaster we saw coming into the park. Other than Revolution, we saw that the line was a little too long for that, so we went straight to Viper. And that's the one that we got me going on the coaster runs.
So that was the coaster where you experienced everything new for the first time. You got to experience your first drop. You got to experience going upside down for the first time, going through several inversions. Viper's got quite a few inversions. They've got the Cobra roll. They've got like 2 historical loops on there. They got a couple of barrel rolls. So you really got to experience almost anything that a coaster can offer.
Yeah, I pretty much jumped straight in the deep end on that one.
So how did you feel getting off that coaster? Or actually, let's say, how did you feel when you were getting closer to the station and getting strapped in?
Station, I was good. Once I sat in the seat, I was a little nervous. Going up the lift hill, nervous. But going down the drop, that first drop, I was just on cloud 9. It was fun.
So getting off that, like, has it made you feel any different in general in your life? Like, did it make you more fearless? I mean, were you ready to ride the next big coaster Six Flags had to offer? Was it a rough ride for you?
It was a little rough. There was a little bit of headbanging but with that being said, after the whole thing, after everything, it was just grinning ear to ear. I would just want to go to the next big thing. I wanted to go for that. What was next? Or do it again.
Okay. Now, Kirbo, I know you've told me some stories in the past of your first time experience, but let's talk about your first roller coaster. Let's not talk like flat rides and stuff like that. What was your first roller coaster that you got to experience when you were young?
First roller coaster, I want to say, is the Freefall was the one.
Okay.
And it was pretty interesting.
Well,
but
Freefall is more like a drop tower.
Drop tower,
which is
correct.
Like that's more like the flat rides. But
right.
How about the actual roller coaster on track where you have to drop, go upside down? What was your first one?
I think it was Viper too, because we started in the back. When we get into the park, we head up to the back area, and Viper was one of the first rides we started with, and it was pretty interesting. You know, it was my first time experiencing it and didn't know what to expect.
Wow. Like, how were you feeling? Like I told JD, like, when you were your first time getting on a roller coaster, like, how were you feeling when you were getting up to the station, seeing the trains just going through the station, going up the lift hill, and you're hearing people screaming like crazy throughout the ride? Like, what were you having a little anxiety? Were you, like, extremely nervous?
Waiting in line, I was fine and everything. It's just when we started going, that's when, like, I had, like, these butterflies in my stomach, and when we started going over the drop, man, I just started yelling right before we go down.
It was when you peaked the crest of the top of the hill, you were screaming.
Just before that, even just barely climbing over the top, I'm just starting to.
A lot of people on their first coasters. I would watch a lot of YouTube videos because there's some pretty good ones of people's first time roller coaster experience. There are people just screaming all the way up the lift hill, like, "Get me off this thing! Oh my God!" Like, there was somebody that was just screaming bloody murder, and it's like, man, if you get all that oxygen out of you now up the lift hill, you're not going to have much screaming power left when you're going through the whole ride.
Oh, yeah.
You know. So, but how did you feel like when you got off?
When I got off the roller coaster, I was a little shaken up. I was just, oh man, I was excited at the same time.
Did you have like a sense of relief, like a sense of accomplishment?
Oh yeah, and I was like, I'm ready for the next one. You know, I'm
just curious because Magic Mountain, like, what was the next coaster you went on after Viper?
I think it was the Revolution. Was it? Yeah,
that's one of the oldest coasters in the park, man. That's a historical coaster. That was the coaster that Chevy Chase was on in National Lampoon's Vacation.
No, actually,
He was on that one with the loop.
Oh,
but
yeah,
he was
yeah.
also on he was also on the one coaster that we'll say was my first coaster when I was like 8 or 9 years old. Colossus was my actual first roller coaster as a kid, and I was extremely scared because I have Tourette's syndrome, and but my dad was like really coaching me, like trying to convince me, saying, hey, this roller coaster doesn't go upside down, it's just like a little bunch of bunny hills going up and down, up and down. He says you're gonna be fine, it's just like going up hills. So that's when he totally convinced me to get on that ride, and it was just amazing. It was like I was screaming like crazy, but it was like I was pretty good on roller coasters that didn't have a loop or didn't twist upside down. So those really, that like the biggest fear I had was, and it was going upside down.
Oh, so you were afraid of going upside down, basically.
Yeah, but another thing back in the day was I used to be afraid of heights back in those days. So going up those lift hills really tall and you're looking down, you're like, oh my God, what the heck am I doing? But Colossus was interesting because I think I was too busy hugging my dad. I wasn't hanging on to the lap bar. I was actually arms around my dad. I was like looking at him, screaming like crazy. But after I got off, I did okay. But, they were trying to get me on the next thing. And I think that's where we're going to fall into our next segment is, the next big thing that my dad and my godfather got me to do was, which you mentioned, Freefall. Freefall was really like my first flat ride, drop tower. And Kirbo, I think you had a pretty good story you were telling me about your first experience on Freefall.
Oh yes, it didn't seem pretty scary at all. It's just, especially standing right next to it and lying. But when I got on that, I was like, okay, it's not bad, and goes to the top, nice view, and it goes forward, and then it just drops, and I was like, oh no, this is not for me. Once I hit the bottom,
it wasn't really that tall. Freefall, I mean, when you look at when you look at Superman today, like I remember there was a time when Superman opened. I think Freefall was still there, and I looked at Freefall and then saw Superman, and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. That makes Freefall look like
a kiddie ride.
A kiddie ride at this point, and you're going to ask people to go on that, and that thing launches you. But yeah, I'll never forget my Freefall is actually something I will never forget as a kid, because my godfather, who's like my dad's oldest cousin, he was a teaser. He was somebody that was like, oh, come on, Dave, you gotta do this with me. Look at it. It's just a 2-story drop. You go up this little elevator and you drop. It's like it's like it drops really quick. It's like getting on a high dive on a diving board and just doing a quick jump, and you're in, quick splash, and you're done. So my dad and my godmother and my they're all like, you went on Colossus, you got to get on Freefall with us. Well, my mother and my sister were like, no, we're going to go sit on the bench here. This might be too young for your sister, but you guys go on and have fun. So I decided to get on that, and then all of a sudden we get on I'm sitting in the middle. We got my godmother in the middle, my dad's to my left, and my cousin's on the far right, and we're going up the elevator, and I'm like, wow, it's got a pretty beautiful view, It's like you can see the whole Santa Clarita Valley from here. And all of a sudden we move forward, and there was no warning. It's like it just dropped, and I remembered I screamed my head off. And the way how it, Freefall is interesting because when you go down, the train actually, you lay down on your back for a while before it raises back up and then brings you forward back to the station. But after I got off, I remembered I was having panic attack, man. I was having a hard time breathing. I mean, when I was walking out the exit, my mom was looking at me and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "I can't breathe. Oh my God, what did I just experience?" And my godfather's like, "You want to ride it again?" And I'm like, "No."
Actually, there is one thing that made me scared going through the queue. Speaking of that, Halloween Horror Nights, or was it Fright Fest at Magic Mountain? I was younger, and riding Colossus backwards.
Colossus went backwards?
Yes, for Halloween.
Really?
Yeah.
I remember Superman went back. Well, like today, Superman still goes backwards, but back in the day, Superman used to go forward.
Yeah.
And during Fright Fest, they turned the trains backwards and made them go backwards in the dark. And I guess it was so popular that Six Flags decided, oh, we're just going to
keep it that way.
You know?
Yeah. So it was Colossus backwards. So imagine going up that lift hill backwards. Not being able to see where you're going. As a kid.
Speaking of drop towers, what was your first drop tower experience, JD? I remember one. All of us were together on.
Actually, no. I've been on plenty of drop towers before, but Freefall was my first.
So we all have had. Well, we've all California natives here. So Six Flags was really like the one big thrilling theme park that I guess we could say we all got to experience first time coasters on together. But I will say that I guess the one drop tower memory that Kirbo and I can remember when we went with a group of us was the original Disney's California Adventure. When it opened, when we saw Paradise Pier for the first time,
Yes.
that we saw that gigantic roller coaster. There was also something very unique in that pier, that there was Maliboomer. Remember Maliboomer?
Yes.
I remember
Oh
that.
yeah. I think we got some good memories about Maliboomer, especially with some of our other friends that joined us that day. But I remembered all of us. You guys really had to sell me to get on that ride, but I did, you know. But the most funny thing about it is that Maliboomer was very unique compared to all the other, like Supreme Scream over at Knott's. Maliboomer had something very unique on the seats. They had like these plastic shields that were in front of you.
The vomit shield.
Well, that was the funny thing. It was like, I remember our buddy Jeremy was with us, and I looked at him and I said, "What the heck are these?" And he goes, "It's a barf shield. So if you throw up, you're not going to spew it down below." Well, if you remember, those shields had a unique shape, because not also was it in front of you, but it literally curved down to your lap. You know, down right, literally like right down to your crotch area. So I looked at Jay and I said, "Dude, if someone barfs,
they're wearing it.
They're gonna wear it, and look where they're gonna wear it, right between the legs, man. That's like, you know, that's got to be the most humiliating thing if that happens, you know." But to find out later, cast member said that was a sound barrier, actually, because
basically it was meant for when you were screaming, it would hit that shield and go up.
Yeah, the purpose of the sound shield, and that explains the tubes over California Screamin' when you go through the hills, is that all the screaming and stuff, they had to channel so that screaming doesn't echo outside the park because of all the neighborhoods, the people that live outside the park in Anaheim. So they had to put those up in place. But from people going on the ride, the first thing on your mind is it's a barf shield. But I'll never forget when we all got to ride that for the first time. And I would say, JD, it took quite a couple of cast members to get you in there.
We had to squeeze. You had to squeeze just a tad just to get the belt to latch.
You know, and I remember it was you, Kirbo, and I, and Jeremy. And then we had a few other people in the group, but they sat on... there was only like rows of four. So the four of us were on one row together, but then the other guys were on the other side in the other tower. And remember how you're hovering, okay? You go up about 2 or 3 feet and you're hovering. And remember when the guy said, "Who's ready to go? Raise your hands." Nobody was raising their hands, but guess who was dumb enough to do it? Our buddy Jeremy went and as he raised his hand is when he shot it up. So when he was going up, his arm was like stuck in place in that up position. You know,
I tried raising my hands, but
I'll never forget that experience. I was literally stuck to the back of my seat. And I was like, holy shit! And then you hear the big bell sound. That was the most unique thing about Maliboomer, because it's like that mallet game where you go to how hard you can hit the...
test your strength.
Test your strength, because it was like that, and then you would hear the giant bell at the top when the train shoots you up, and it was amazing. But then you dropped, and I was screaming my head off. But I swear to God, Jeremy looked like he was going to barf on that ride.
But you know what? Honestly, we had the best view out of our whole group. We had the best view.
Yes, we did. We were able to view the entire Disneyland park.
Yep,
from that
California Adventure and Disney.
Yeah, that was a very incredible view. It was really interesting that they took that ride out. I believe the reason why they took Maliboomer out was because it wasn't Disney enough.
Yes.
Pretty much. Which, it's a pier. All piers have a wooden roller coaster or a metal roller coaster, and usually you would see a drop tower. But this drop tower was very unique because out of all the drop towers in Southern California, that was the one that shot you up. The only other nearby drop tower that did that, you mentioned it, was in Las Vegas.
Vegas, yeah. The Stratosphere.
The Stratosphere needle, or the tower.
Mm-hmm.
Their antenna was the drop tower. So that was probably the next closest thing in the West Coast at the time, in early 2000s, to have that.
I actually rode that. I rode it.
You got on the drop tower one or the roller coaster that was at Stratosphere?
The drop tower.
Wow. I never got to ride that roller coaster.
That was a little frightening.
Oh, I've been on the Stratosphere. It's 113 stories tall. It's about as high as the World Trade Center in New York. I remember going on there. Now, my buddy Ted got to go on there. I never went on it. Like I said, I was afraid of heights.
Oh no!
I literally stayed in the center of that tower. You couldn't get me close to. I mean, I finally got the courage to get close, but it's really frightening when you see a helicopter coming towards your way and it's at your eye level.
Yeah.
And then that was just
or watching planes coming into McCarran, mind you, and we're like the strip's a few miles, and you can actually see airplanes clear as day during the daytime coming into land.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, so on the drop towers, I guess all of us say Freefall was our first experience. But we had some very memorable memories on Maliboomer, which is something that a lot of people out today will never get to experience. Have you ever ridden Supreme Screen over at Knott's?
Yes.
That one was
I have an incident about that one.
But the thing is, like, at least with Supreme Screen, it gradually took you up like Freefall, like an elevator. You go up to the top. And the thing is, like, I could hear the hooks. Like, when it unhooks to drop you, you can literally hear the click going down. And I remember, gosh, Ted got me on that. And there's a story behind that on how I got up to really breaking my fears in general. But it was like that ride, I had to get on that thing a few times to really break my fears on that ride. It really took me some time. But I sucked it up and did it, you know. So, but yeah. Well, what other crazy moments have you experienced?
It was at Magic Mountain. I saw someone actually throw up in the big spiral of Goliath because we didn't have a brake run.
Oh, the Helix?
Yeah, there was no brake run. There was no mid-brake run. It would hit the top, and then it would drop down and then go right dead end of that Helix, and I just saw someone just spew about halfway through it.
Kirbo, I believe you told me that you had a very unique experience on Superman over at Magic Mountain.
Yeah, I was I was there with my friends, and then my friends got me onto it, and so when I went into the ride,
Yes,
going
we did.
forward on the ride, it was fine, but when it got to the top and it dropped backwards, my body just tensed up really bad. I can't see where I'm going from backwards, so I was like screaming. And it was after that ride, I was like, nope, this is not mine. Nope, I'm out. I'm done with this.
Was that
one.
the only time you've been on it, or have you gone on it a few
It
times?
was just one time.
Just the one time?
Yeah, and I said after that, no.
So what is it about with Superman with you? Is it just the height?
No, it's just going backwards. I can't see where I'm going, where my body automatically tenses up. Now, going forward is fine. I'd be screaming like, woo! But if I can't see where I'm going, my body's automatically...
then you know what? Sometime soon, when this pandemic blows over, yeah, I'm taking you with me to Cedar Point. I'm gonna get you on Top Thrill Dragster with me. I think you'll enjoy that one. Just picture Superman, but going forward, except you go through a top hat, and then you twist down.
Yeah, no backwards.
But you go 0 to 100, 120, where Superman's only going 0 to 100. So it's a little faster, but it's lasts 17 seconds.
Oh, nice.
So I think you'll get a thrill on that one. I really, yeah, we're gonna make that happen. I'm gonna take you to Cedar Point.
All right.
Because Cedar Point was the first park that I ever visited when I first traveled out of California, and that's where it comes down to, my story on my first how did I break my fears on everything.
So, Dave, I have a question for you. What was your biggest fear of going on your first roller coaster?
Gosh, I've always had that was always the biggest challenge with me, was like, although experiencing Colossus as a kid, but it wasn't bad because it was just, airtime hills that all Colossus offered. But the biggest fear I had was inversions, like the loops, launch coasters, being twisted, upside down, going through like a barrel roll. And, when I was 9 years old, I was diagnosed with Tourette syndrome. Now, back in the 90s, everybody didn't know what Tourette syndrome was. Like today, everybody knows what Tourette's is. It's a neurological disorder. Those that don't know Tourette's, it's more like a nervous disorder. So like whenever you get nervous or you get stressed, you develop what's called tics. So I started like head twitching, eye blinking, my throat would start clearing, and it's out of my control. So I always had a hard time getting on even bigger, crazier coasters. I would say I remember all the years we would go to Disney, because we've all loved going to Disney. We were all annual pass holders, and I would always, when we would go as a group, the biggest ride at Disney that you could never get me on was California Screamin'. And you guys almost had me on there one time, and I will say, Kirbo, you had me very close at one time. You want to share that one?
Yeah, was it at the time? It was Jeremy, our friend.
Yeah.
And all three of us, we were up in the line, and we trying to coach you, like, everything will be good, and then we get up to the front of the line, and then right when the door opens to go on the ride, you got right off. I'm like, so close.
Yeah. Once the gate had opened, I backed off, and it was like, oh, come on, you came this far. But I walked through the train, and I went on the other side, and I went at you guys, and I said, I will see you guys on the other side. And just like always, I will be standing at the launch ramp, watching you guys launch off into the sunset on that ride. It's just, it was just, I will say, the challenging part, that was it. It was the loop. the loop was the thing that scared me the most. Always afraid of not knowing what it's like, afraid of getting stuck upside down. I've seen stories in the past where coasters with loops, the trains would get stuck upside down and people would be stuck upside down for hours. I just had a really deep fear. My Tourette's would flare up every time someone would try to get me to try to get on, like my girlfriend back in '99 after we graduated high school was trying to get me on Viper over at Magic Mountain, and I just was. She had me so close, like you did with California Screamin'. You could not get me on there. I mean, she was making some special promises to me if I went on the ride with her. That didn't even work either. I was like, no, sorry, I can't do that. But I will say that my story is very interesting because 2015 is the year I'll never forget. My life. I've gone through many challenges in my life. I had a really tough time during the economic crash back in 2009. That was when my wife and I got married. We both lost our jobs that year, 3 months before we got married, and we ended up getting divorced. Long story short on that, it just didn't work out. We both equally agreed to just go our separate ways. It was something I wasn't expecting. So in 2015, that was a really tough year for me. There was a lot of challenges going on. And, Ted, one of our buddies, me and him liked going to Disney a lot. We would go to Disney on the weekends. It was like my getaway from all the troubles that were going on in the world.
So you would say Disney is your staycation home park?
Pretty much. And we would even stay. I'll never forget that weekend. Ted and I went for a special event that weekend over at Disneyland, and we even stayed at the Grand Californian Hotel, which is one of the nicest hotels at Disney. And we literally would spend 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday at Disney. And it was Saturday evening, just before sunset. Ted and I are over at Paradise Pier. We're over by the Sympathy Swings.
Oh, yes.
And because there's a beer stand over there, and Ted likes to get his beer, and he actually bought me a couple beers. And we were over by the swings, and there's that little deck where you can see the water, you can see the pier, beautiful setting. And he out of the blue turned around and said, "You know what, Dave? You would really make my day if you'll go on California Screamin' with me, because I really don't want to go on this thing alone." And I looked at him and I said, that's going to be a difficult task. So many people have tried to get me on that ride many times throughout the years.
I've tried.
I told him, I said, I don't think it's possible that you're going to get me to go on that with you. And he turned around and he goes, "What is it that you're so afraid of that ride?" And I told him, I said, the loop is really the number one, but also it's a launch coaster. I've never been on a launch coaster before, and I just seeing that launching off right into that first hill and going on that immediate first drop, I was really fear of falling. Heights, fear of falling, the drop feel, it's just how it feels in my stomach.
How you leave your stomach at the top?
Yeah, it's just something I'm not used to. And, well, out of the blue, he was like, "Well, I challenge you to face your fears on this ride once and for all." Now, I had a couple of beers in me that evening, but it wasn't enough to get me tipsy or drunk. I was totally self-aware of what's going on around me. I wasn't really out of it. But also at that time, I was going through a tough year. I had a lot of difficult situations around me at the time. And I was like, okay, when he said he challenged me, I was like, okay, what do I got to lose here? I had so much frustration and stuff inside me. It was like I needed something to I needed to let it out. I need to do it in a healthy way where it's not going to hurt anybody, or you're going to say or do something that you're going to eventually regret in life. So I said, okay, challenge accepted. Let's get on it. Well, luckily, the ride time for California Screamin' was only 10 minutes. How often do you see a Disney ride at 10 minutes, 10-minute wait?
Right.
It's rare how busy Disney can be.
Yeah, it's like finding a leprechaun.
Yeah, it's almost like. So we got on there pretty quickly. But then Ted's like, he made sure we got on the back row. I'll never forget that night. Blue train, back row. And I was like, I looked at Ted. I like, are you serious? You're going to make me ride this for the first time in the back row. Usually I like to ride the front row so I can kind of see what I'm going to be facing ahead of time. You know, just like back row, really. I know it's the most exciting part of where to sit on a roller coaster, but really like first time. So I was really, really nervous. And I got on it, you know, once they put the overhead shoulder restraints on and it was locked in place. And then when the music started, you know, the guy's like, have fun screaming. And all of a sudden you hear that music going and you go through that curve. And all of a sudden I just remember hearing Neil Patrick Harris saying, get ready, screamers. Sit back and hold on tight. And I'm like, oh my God, right? So we get to the launch ramp, right? And you hear that music playing. You know, I still remember how that music plays in my head, right? So it's like I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh God, he's going to do the countdown soon. And then all of a sudden, we got delayed. We were delayed. The music was just playing over and over.
But I know why you were delayed. Usually when they delay the ride at Disney, it's because they're moving a disabled person in and out of the cars.
Possibly. You know, they were running all 6 trains that night on that coaster. I mean, that's the one unique thing about California Screamin' is that this coaster can have multiple trains going on at the same time, and that's what makes the line move so fast at that ride. But I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh my God, it's like the anxiety started rolling. Like, oh God, when is he going to take off? And then all of a sudden, you hear him go, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go! And all of a sudden we go, whoosh! And I'm like, oh my God, what the heck is this? And then I remember going up that first hill, and I was screaming down that first hill, and I'm just sitting there like, had this weird look, like, oh my God, what the heck did I get myself into?
So you had this those look of uncertainty.
Yeah, I was like, what the heck am I got myself into? And then we get up to the second climb, the second hill, and we're going up to do the big drop. And I'm looking over at Ted, and I'm like, I'm going to kill you. I am so going to kill you when we get off this ride, right? And we get up to the top, and all of a sudden, but one thing I will say, California Screamin' was neat, was the music playing during the ride. You can hear the music, and the rock and roll music part of the ride actually was pretty neat. I guess you can say it kind of helped you, you know, get through the anxiety part of the experience. And so I do that first drop, and I am just screaming my head off, right? But in a weird way, guys, the screaming helped me get so much weight off my chest. Because like I said, I had so much happening in my life that year. Just screaming it out really helped, like, made me feel like the sense of relief, but for a short time, because once I got through that second drop and we made that bank turn, all of a sudden, you know, you got that little straight part where you're approaching the loop, and I'm like, oh my God, I literally closed my eyes, and I just felt myself just like, it was weird. It was like, even with your eyes closed, I could tell we were going upside down, but it happened so quick. I was like, that's it? That was like maybe a 2-second quick upside down, and all of a sudden we're just past it. And I'm like, that was it? And then all of a sudden we went through this immediate drop. But the one part of the ride that got my stomach was the bunny hills, the little bunny hills.
Yeah.
Every time we would go through them, my stomach would tickle. It was like, I just like, oh my, like, what the heck am I feeling here? And then we were like, I guess toward the end, would you say that's like the Helix?
Yeah.
Like you do that big spin, and all of a sudden, there's the camera. The camera's just hitting right toward the end. And I still have that ride photo to this day, guys. It's sitting right here in my office, in the studio with all the other coasters I've been on. But after that, we were kind of stuck at the end before we got into the station. So it gave me time to take a deep breath, and just process what I experienced. But when I got off that ride, literally, I took my arm and I wrapped it around Ted's neck. And I was like, let's do this again. We went on that coaster 3 times that night. Front row, middle, and back. I wanted to experience it all. And that was the night Coaster Challenge was born, because that ride broke so much of my anxiety and my fears away. It made me feel so good, and I felt so proud, so accomplished, because for 15 years that park was open, I had watched all you guys get on that coaster. And I would be sitting there taking pictures of you guys on the launch ramp. And I was watching you guys just take off on that ride.
Grinning ear to ear.
And then this time, and I got to experience it with my best friend at the time. And I was like, wow, I never felt so accomplished. And so I was ready to do the next big thing. And that was when the guys took me to Knott's Berry Farm for the first time in like 20 years that I've been to Knott's. And that's when I got to experience my first B&M invert, Silver Bullet. I experienced Ghost Rider in the past. Ghost Rider was like the second wooden coaster, so I did get to experience Ghost Rider back in the mid-90s. But when I experienced it the same year in 2015, it was different. Friends were saying, oh, they retracked this. It's a lot different experience. Yeah, it was a real different experience. That thing went so much faster. I remember Ted and I were together on the train, and after we went through the drop and we were just hauling butt on that ride, him and I both were like, holy shit, what the... I don't remember it being this fast before. And everyone's like, yeah, it's a lot faster now. It's like, I can tell.
Yep.
Yeah, I rode Ghost Rider back in the 90s. It was a little bumpy. It was a little rough. But that's expected from most wooden coasters, right?
Yeah. But the one coaster that literally turned me instantly into an enthusiast when I went to Knott's was Accelerator. That was at the time in 2015, was the fastest coaster I went on, fastest launch coaster that I went on. That coaster right there turned me into an enthusiast immediately. I was like, that ride, if I had any doubts or additional fear still in me left, that coaster knocked it all completely out. Because once I had gotten on Accelerator, and my first time riding Accelerator was at night, which I heard was the best time to ride that coaster. It was insane. I was like, oh my god, I can't believe how fast that thing shoots you out of the station, 0 to 88 in like 4 seconds, and then you're all of a sudden up on that top hat, and then you go through a figure 8, and the ride only lasts like 32 seconds. But it was the best 32 seconds I ever experienced in my life at that time. But I have since the last 5 years. I've experienced a lot of crazy coasters.
So, with all the coasters you've been on, what was your absolute favorite?
As of right now, my coaster count is 202 coasters that I've been on since California Screaming. And I will say my number one favorite coaster right now is Steel Vengeance over at Cedar Point. It is just like Twisted Colossus, but it is like the mother of all Twisted Colossus. It's like the biggest. It was the craziest RMC coaster. I have ridden a few RMC coasters before Steel Vengeance. That one really was an experience. And Cedar Point knocked it out of the park when they opened that coaster. When I went to Cedar Point for the first time, it was 2017. They were building Steel Vengeance. I didn't get to experience Mean Streak. I wish I would have had an opportunity to experience Mean Streak before they converted it to Steel Vengeance. But it was just... That's like my number one so far. I'm curious because Iron Gwazi is going to be opening at Busch Gardens Tampa this year. And I'm planning to ride that this year.
And try to compare the two?
I'm waiting to see if this coaster is going to become my new number one, or is Steel Vengeance going to have that title. Other than that, I would say my top three favorite coasters, Steel Vengeance being one, Fury 325 over at Carowinds would be my number two favorite, and Maverick at Cedar Point goes to number three for me. And I also, let's say number four, which is now my new fastest coaster I've been on so far, is Top Thrill Dragster over at Cedar Point. Cedar Point was the first theme park that I got to visit outside of California. And I will say that was the best experience. I got to experience a lot of coasters that we don't have here in the West Coast. They have some... The East Coast and the Midwest has some of the best, craziest coasters that I just love dearly. And I've been going out to Ohio at least once a year. I always like going out there. Going out to Cedar Point, going out to Kings Island. I love going to the East Coast. Love going down to Florida. So I've been traveling quite a bit. I've been to a few parks, but there's still a lot of parks that I still need to go and visit. I plan to moving forward.
So some of the parks that now that you've touched on the parks, what is your most favorite theme park? Like, I mean, with like the people, the rides, everything. Just an overall, your just absolute favorite place to visit, other than our home of California.
I will say Cedar Point is number one on my list. That I try to make that an annual trip every year to go, and I try to bring friends that have never been outside California. I try to bring them along with me to experience it. Cedar Point falls number one. I do enjoy going to Carowinds over in Charlotte, North Carolina.
So that's your number two park?
Yeah, and I like Kings Island over in Mason, Ohio. But it's hard because a lot of the parks I've been to have been fantastic. Like Kings Dominion over in Virginia is really awesome. In Florida, SeaWorld Orlando is a really fun place to go. Mako is like my most favorite hyper coaster. And if you don't know for those that are not coaster enthusiasts, hyper coasters are any coaster that's up to over 200 feet. So like Goliath at Magic Mountain is considered a hyper coaster. A giga coaster is Fury 325. Anything over 300 feet is considered a giga coaster. Steel Vengeance is 205 feet tall. It's a steel hyper hybrid coaster, which is the first ever made in the nation. So like I would say Busch Gardens Williamsburg is a really beautiful park. That's in really like my number 3 favorite park. And then I actually got to experience Dollywood for the first time last year, and Dollywood is a really beautiful park, and that park's got a lot of potential. And I can't wait to see what that park's going to be doing moving forward. So there's just a lot of great parks, and especially in Texas. Six Flags Fiesta Texas is one of the most beautiful Six Flags parks I've ever seen. It's really beautiful. If you were to take the beauty of Fiesta Texas and put it over at Magic Mountain, you would have like a really nice dream vision of a park right now. So
with that being said, your favorite themed roller coaster, like the theming of it with the name and the way the queue set up and the backstory of that attraction or roller coaster you've been on.
That will still fall back to Steel Vengeance, because Steel Vengeance is based in a Western theme, and it's based on 3 bandits, 3 characters, and the trains have their names on the coaster and their backstories of why they are. And they came back with a vengeance to go against Maverick. It's a really good storyline that I like. When they revealed Steel Vengeance, it's a really good story theme. Now, if you're talking something like over at Disney or Universal,
I'm not touching those two, because those are like the most thematic theme parks.
Yeah,
but we're talking like just Six Flags, Cedar Point,
Busch
Gardens.
I would say Steel Vengeance has a good theme and storyline to it, but also West Coast Racers over at Magic Mountain with West Coast Customs. How they did the underground, that whole theming and everything. It's not much of a storyline, but it's an experience. It's like that underground racing experience. That's
like the illegal street racing scene?
Exactly. It's the most common theme we see here in LA with street racing. The underground with West Coast Racers really brings that to life, for people to experience. And seeing what West Coast Customs, I can imagine, if the pandemic, if it didn't happen, I could only imagine what West Coast Customs and Six Flags on some of the theming events they would do in that area. Especially Fright Fest, the holidays. They may have car shows, like the car show we experienced, the drive-thru. That was just a great example, and so that's definitely, if you come to California, you want to experience that at Magic Mountain. Is the underground, and the food that they carry and that they have over there too is good. So
and last but not least, so you've done 202. Out of all the 202, well, we know what your favorite is. What is your least favorite?
Oh, least favorite.
We're talking like the most rough. We're not trying to take a dig at the ride. It's just the general experience of how that roller coaster was.
I will say it was Kitty Hawk over at Carowinds. It's like it looks like a Vekoma SLC, which is in the coaster enthusiast community. Vekoma SLCs are some of the most, along with boomerangs, are probably some of the most not loved coasters out there. But there are a few that are decent. But Kitty Hawk, when I saw that for the first time, Kings Island has a similar one called Flying Ace Aerial Chase. And when I had to compare that to Kitty Hawk, Flying Ace was a lot more fun. Kitty Hawk was a headbanger. It only went 25 miles an hour, but every time it turned, because the over-shoulder restraints, they literally go up to your head, all the way up to the top of your head. Oh. So when you go to turn and stuff, your head was banging hard to the left, banging hard to the right. That was the first coaster that I got off. I had a severe headache from. Oh. And I was like, one and done. And
never doing it again.
Yes, and those that want to want to verify that, you can go to my YouTube channel with Coaster Challenge and look up Season 3 of Carowinds and look up the special videos for Kitty Hawk, and you will see my review, and you'll know exactly, you'll see the expression on my face when I got off that ride. It was not the greatest experience I've had so far.
Yeah, so I've had that same similar experience that you had, but with an older coaster at our Six Flags Park. It was called Flashback.
Oh, Flashback.
That was rough.
I never got to experience Flashback.
Yeah, because unfortunately they took it out and they ripped up half the park to build Hurricane Harbor.
Yeah. Well, I've heard some stories about Flashback. I think my dad has told me some stories about that.
That's a headache waiting to happen, or that was a headache that happened.
Yeah. But I will say that riding roller coasters really changed my life completely. I'm not afraid of anything anymore.
So it was therapeutic for you then?
Very. The theme parks have really been a therapy session. It's amazing what the theme parks, amusement parks do. You know, some of the rides that are there. You know, they're fun to do, but for some people like me, it's therapy because it helps relieve the stress, the anxiety, and I'm happy to say my Tourette's has not flared up since I broke my fears. I have shared that story to so many people that I've met. I've even met, I had met a young man at Kings Island who had Tourette syndrome like me. It was the first person I've ever met who had Tourette's. And it was really amazing because his family was there. We were in line to ride the Beast at night, and we were next to each other, and they actually overheard my story telling a enthusiast about my Tourette's, and the parents came up and said, "Hey, our son has Tourette's," and we connected, and we were talking this language that nobody could understand, but him and I were able to understand what we were going through.
Yeah, the scrutiny of the weird looks.
Just people making fun of you, bullying you, humiliating you. It's just really bad. Back when I was his age, he was around the same age I was when I got diagnosed. And back in the 90s, nobody knew what Tourette's was. Like I said earlier, teachers at schools did not know how to handle it. Kids were just making fun of me, thinking I was just being... I had teachers that were disciplining me. They thought I was just being a class clown and just joking around, and I was serving detention quite a few times because of my tics. I had my 5th grade teacher humiliated me in front of the whole class. It was a really bad situation, and my mom was the one that was really fighting for me, trying to educate everybody what Tourette's was. And I'm glad that today that it's pretty well aware. You know, people are fully aware about Tourette's. There's no cure for the disorder, but there's ways to treat it. I found my treatment. My treatment was getting on these roller coasters, and I learned that it's mainly because throughout my years of doing Coaster Challenge, I've learned that what's really causing a lot of people's problems is fear. Fear is the problem. Fear doesn't discriminate. It don't matter what you see politically, if you're black and white, if you speak English or not. Fear is fear. And fear really dictates how you live your life. It stopped me as a kid. It affected my childhood. My Tourette's really affected my childhood. There was a lot of things I didn't get to experience when I was a kid because of fear. Fear caused my Tourette's, caused my anxiety. Now that I've broken those fears, I have become a much better person. And I've spent my entire life dedicating my life to service, of helping others who are going through fear, that are having fear, that are having problems with their lives. I have dedicated my entire life. As a kid, I was a Boy Scout. You know, I spent my childhood helping others. And that's what my YouTube channel has been about. It's basically an archive showing people I want to show every coaster hopefully in the world on that channel. And with this podcast, my mission, like, this is not a Me Too product here, folks. We're not just creating a podcast because we just feel like starting a podcast. We're on a mission here. The mission is, I want people to share their stories. I want regular people to come on here and tell us how they were able to defeat fear. And tell us about their coaster experience and how much it's changed their lives. So that is going to be our mission here moving forward, is we want to start sharing people how to break their fears. Because it is time that people need to rise up and just face their fears. Because if you don't face them, it's going to determine how you're going to live your life. And if you want to live your life in fear, you're going to have a pretty sad life. Because you're going to be missing out on so many opportunities that you could experience or do. That fear will be that roadblock, and you've got to take down that roadblock.
Yeah, well, exactly what you were saying. It's you see that door is open for that opportunity, but that fear of going through that door.
Exactly.
Is what we're trying to help everyone learn. Like, don't let it stop you. Let it be, that fear can be your motivation to get into whatever you want to do. If you're afraid of going on a roller coaster, use that fear to push you over that hump to go onto it, or to try for something in your life that you've never tried before. It's just something. To live in fear, it's not fun.
No, and I've experienced it. I can feel people's pain. I know exactly what it goes through. And you know what? Moving forward in future episodes, I am looking forward to sharing everyone's stories and hearing what they've done to overcome it, or maybe help those that are still in fear and try to help give them that direction, that guide them to hopefully that they can live a better life. Folks, it has helped me. It's made me a much better human being. It's made me a much fearless person. I'm not afraid when it comes to situations at work, around my family. I'm not afraid to be around strangers. And I'm not afraid to tell people how it is. If someone out there is just selling fear and inflicting fear, I'm not afraid to stand up and say, no, you're wrong. So I am so looking forward to sharing people's stories. And I really want to take this opportunity. We're about to end it here. And next week, when we do our next episode, we're going to be introducing our correspondence team, Andrew, Iva, and Jenna. And we're going to, that way you guys get to hear about their experiences. We want you guys to get to know the whole team that's going to be, because these guys are going to be doing special episodes and special interviews with people without us time to time.
Yeah, because we're in California. Andrew's from Florida.
And Iva's in Ohio. Jenna's here in the West Coast with us, so she's going to be going out to Vegas. So it's like I'm really proud that we have a team around the whole country that can represent this podcast and be able to interview people from all over and tell us different experiences and all the stories and stuff. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for listening in. I hope you guys were entertained as a viewer, hopefully learned something from our experience. And please feel free to send us some comments, suggestions in the podcast. And if you like to be a guest on the show, you can always send us an email at coasterchallengeusa@gmail.com. Or you can also reach out to us on Instagram at Coaster Challenge, Twitter at Coaster Challenge, and Facebook. And and we're going to end it here, JD. So thank you so much, guys, for taking time to listen.
Kirbo, thank you for being on.
Well, thank you.
Yes, and it was a really awesome, and thank you for sharing us your experience, Kirbo. But until then, this is David Cantu.
This is JD Prescott.
And we will talk to you guys next week.
And do you all accept the Coaster Challenge out there?
We'll see you next week.